Ahoy and welcome to this Narrowboat adventure. Today is the first episode of the book club. I have my copy of Cargoes to London Islands here, and we're starting at the very beginning, the first island in the book on page 7, which is Canvey Island. I visited Canvey Island by train because Canvey Island is right at the mouth of the Thames and it's quite choppy there, not really narrowboat appropriate. Canvey Island, its nearest train station is Benfleet. You can actually see the train from the island arriving. I have a shot of that here. So that was taken from Dauntless Boatyard. So I went to visit my very, very good friend John Hill, who lives on Canvey Island. He lives in Dauntless Boatyard, as I say. His boat is just out of the water while he does some work on it. And I spoke to him a little bit about what it's like to live there. Well, I'll let John tell you a little bit more about it and then I'll come back.
Hello, I'm John. I live on Canvey Island at the moment. I live on a small boat in Dauntless Boatyard on the north shore, where Lee Creek separates the island from the mainland. We're nearly a year now. Yeah, I shouldn't have been living here this long. The original plan was to come here for just a couple of months, but yeah, it's comfortable. It's quite nice living here. It kind of reminds me of living up north when I was growing up. I don't know, it's just really quiet. Reminds me of all the things I liked about home, except for there's a dirty grip bit of sea around it, which is quite pleasant. It's definitely livelier. There's a fair amount of wind and wave rolls in off the North Sea and the Channel. The traffic is definitely busier out here. It's about, I'd say, a 7 or 8 hour cruise from the river I used to live on, the River Lee, and yeah, the sea is a totally different thing. People out here are much more casual. I tend to find people on rivers, because they're used to it being so calm, they get quite nervous. But you know, you come out somewhere like this and things like that big speedboat outside, people will be rocketing up and down Lee Creek at 30 knots, you know, and they just, it's all very loose and all very, very informal, which I quite like. Yeah, you know, people don't tie their ropes tight here. They just let the boat go with the tide, and there's lots of swinging moorings here where you're literally just tied to a buoy chain, and that is it. You know, there's no, you'll never hear anybody here saying slow down, or you know, or posting on London boaters that it's had stuff knocked off shelves or anything like that, because it's the sea. I think it's what you're used to. That's the problem really. Is people on the rivers are used to this really calm, serene. You know, the worst wave you get on a river is if the wind whips up a couple of inches of wave. But out here they can get to meters quite easily. I suppose that's the way of exploring in the world, isn't it? People just go, oh well, we've heard about bad mooring on the London rivers. We don't want to go in there because we've heard all these stories about it. And everybody on the inland rivers, like the non-tidal Thames, and they think of the Thames as this big monstrous place where everybody goes out and dies and boats roll over and sink, and it actually happens quite. You know, there's obviously things you have to look out for, but it's just preparedness. It's knowing what you're going to deal with. I mean, I knew Cheveline was built to ground because, you know, I knew she had twin keels from when I last had her lifted. I'd done research into it. The RLM is a tidal boat. They were made for estuary cruising. Yeah, there's historical videos of them out near the wind farm, right out offshore and things like that. And so I wasn't scared of it. So I just made sure I was sort of ready, and I'd done a little bit of tidal cruising with Steve down in Portsmouth before I took it on, and yeah, it was an interesting trip. It was new ground for me, on new water, and yeah, the lock keeper at Galleon's Reach, really nice guy called Axel, but he's quite loose and slack, and he buggered off for a Nando's, let us out 3 hours late. So the journey was supposed to take us a set amount of time and get us in just at the right tide. So we would be riding the tide up the creek past Southend and get here in no time. But instead, when we got here, we were against the tide as it went out and dried the island out. So, you know, an hour's trip turned into a 2 hour trip up the Lee Creek. in which we were cruising along, and I sort of, you know, when you're cruising, you feel things hitting the bottom. Yeah, so could feel things hitting, thinking, and the depth sounder. I've got a depth sounder on the boat, and that was going lower than a metre, and it was like 3 feet, 2 feet, 1 feet, 0. And then when it started to show 0, you could really feel things hitting because the propellers on this boat stick out below the hull, so you could feel things going through the propellers like mud and stones and things. And then it was just you felt the boat stop. That was it. Game over. Got a stick. I've got one of those boat brushing poles. Got one of those, extended it, and got like 5 inches. Like, yeah, we're done. Within 5 minutes, but in literally in the time it took me to shut the engines down and close off the valves to stop sand getting in. It's probably already in, but to stop it. In that time, it was gone. The water was totally gone. And I came in here and went, kids, you know we're on a beach, don't you? And they what? A beach? Opened the curtains, and we were just on sand. We were just sat in the middle of what was a river about 20 minutes ago. We were just sat on a beach. It was great. Climbed down off the drivers on the back of the boat and played on the beach for a few hours. Got the dog. He's got a life jacket with a plastic hook on the top of it, and I've got a boat hook, and just hooked that on the jacket. Just lowered him down onto the beach, unhooked him, let him run around, and then sort of said, "How am I going to get the dog back on?" I didn't think of this because it was too high to just like put him on, lift him up, and put him on, and so played hook a dog. With the boat hook, trying to get him to lay still while I hooked this plastic thing on the back of his neck. And then when I finally managed to get him to hooked on and lifted him up, he wasn't happy at all. But it was a good night. Yeah, I could totally understand that. There have been people be injured and have to be rescued off the salt marshes and stuff like that, and I totally understand why. It is deep mud. It's a proper marsh. It just looks like grass, but when you're walking on it, there's nothing there. Yeah, you can just vanish. But the sandy bit gets swept clean every day by the tide, twice a day. And it's pretty. It was just sand. It wasn't anything special. It was pretty good. Somewhere out there's a propeller. It's quiet. It's nice. Everything you need here. I mean, it's not got anywhere near as much luxury as London, but it does have everything you'd need. Yeah, there's a couple of big superstores, a little shopping centre in the middle, high street. By far my favourite part of the island is the seawall around it. Doesn't have much of a beach. It's quite rocky. There's lots of Canvey is quite famous for its oyster fleet and its oyster fishing. And when you go down onto the beach, it's just seashells. It's really hard, sharp stuff that can hurt your feet. But especially when you go a bit further up, it just becomes like old, big, rocky oyster shells, and it's quite hard on your feet to walk on it. But it's pleasant. It's really nice. If you go to the North Shore, which we will do in a bit, you've just got this. You've got Lee Creek in front of you, and then just the backdrop is Southend in front of you, and it's really good view. So there's a little man-made beach. It's too perfect. You know, they literally they made a U out of the seawall, because Canvey has I think it's 25 feet tall seawall around the entire island, and to keep out storm surges and flooding, because they used to have really bad flooding here, and to allow for kids and things like that, they've built some tidal swimming pools, and then at one section of the wall they've just made a U in the wall, just a bit where it sets back, and they had loads of sand, like really clean, perfect sand, just shipped in and dumped, and it's made this weird artificial beach that's surrounded by a wall, and it's not, it doesn't seem right, but kids love it. I'm used to. I mean, I grew up in Nottinghamshire and Yorkshire. We had Skegness. I suppose it's like an artificial cove. You see on movies where they have like a little cove and it'll be rocky walls with a beach in the middle. They've basically made that. Yeah. And the whole seawall is covered in. We've just seen them, the benches. If you read the plaques on the benches, there's lots of them dedicated to people who've died and drowned, and the fishing fleet and things like that all the way along it. It's interesting to read them. Yeah, there's a couple of fishing fleets on the island. They're mainly based from the western side of Southend. There's a proper little fishing area there, but yeah, there's lots of private fishing launches from Canvey. There's this boatyard, Dauntless, which is a working boatyard. It's not a flash one. There are a lot of people live here. There's an actual residential bit over the back, but yeah, it's a more industrial boatyard. There's one on the east coast called Small Gaines that's quite popular. A fair few people live there, but to me, the things that would put people off that are the reasons why I love it, because it's got this real like cool shanty town feel to it, where all of the boats are moored on pontoons, which are just these little wooden jetties built on stakes sticking out the ground. We'll have a look at that later. It's interesting. I love that like that. You know, I don't like the formalness of most marinas. You know, they have the nice new pontoons and they're all lined up perfectly, and I don't like that.
No, me either.
Yeah, you like Small Gaines. It's different.
We'll see. John took me to visit the other boatyard in the island, which is called Small Gaines, and he was absolutely right. I fell right in love with it. It's very lovely, very beautiful. Exactly the kind of thing I like. It looks like something out of a pirate movie. So as John says, the entire island is surrounded by this humongous sea wall, and on the seawall the book mentions that there's lots of paintings and murals, and they are absolutely gorgeous. Some of them are historical based. There's one that's to do with the war efforts that they've been involved in, and then there's some that are more like fishing and all sorts of different things. And it's really interesting because I wasn't really expecting the seawall to go all the way around the entire island, which is maybe a bit naive of me, but it does go all the way around the entire island. So when you're on the other side of the seawall, it can almost seem like you're not in an island at all. And it's just sort of a quite sleepy town. And then you get up onto the wall and then there's this gorgeous sea view to look out on. Now in the book it mentions this sort of quirky fairground rides and the sort of carnival feeling, and we went in July and I was kind of expecting there to be lots of tourists and it to be all really open and stuff, but there weren't actually very many people there, and it was a really hot day, but I think because it was a weekday maybe. But I found a carnival, but it was closed, but I wondered if maybe if I went on the weekends it would be a bit more lively. I'm not going to tell you too much about what's in the book because I think if you're going to read it yourself then you'll enjoy it much more that way. There's a really nice interview in the book with Dean Macy, who came from Canvey Island, I believe still lives there. He is a decathlete, he's represented England in the Olympics and in the Commonwealth Games, and I just found that a really fascinating read, as obviously my friend John has only lived on the island a short while. He's obviously seen it change throughout his whole life, and I thought that was a really interesting perspective. To add on to what is recommended to do on the island in the book, I would recommend you have fish and chips. I think it's a perfect place for a very British seaside day out. If you've ever been to Canvey Island, or if you've ever had a very British seaside day out, let me know all about that in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories, especially in this gorgeous weather. It'll make me feel very happy. Have a beautiful day. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again for the next instalment of the book club, or whatever else I decide to post next week. We'll see. Have a lovely day. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.